Here we are to start chapter 15, other diatonic seventh chords. So get your tea or whatever it is you drink to get through music theory. And I did ask you before you turned this on to write the diatonic seventh chords in G major and G minor. So just make sure these are correct, what you have here. No accidentals are needed when you put the key of G major in, but in G minor, be sure you put the sharp on the leading tone on the 5 chord and the 7, okay? Notice that in major, the 7 is half diminished, same as the 2 half diminished in minor, but the 7 in minor is fully diminished. Okay, it's an interesting chord. We'll talk about that soon. So, looking on page 237, you'll see that there's a nice ranking there of chords by frequency in major. And of course, it starts to the left with a 5-7 that we already talked about. And then it seems to kind of go in the circle of fifths a little bit. We get the 2 of fifth up. The 7 is related to the 2 and the 5. Then we back up to the 4, the 6, the 1, and finally the least important, the least used is the 3 minor in major. It's used more in minor because it's the relative major. Okay, basically all you have to know in this chapter is that these chords with 7ths are going to act the same way harmonically as the triads that you've already learned. Okay, so harmonic progression and all will be the same. Look at the principles at the bottom of the first page. The 7th is going to resolve down by step, and it can be approached in various ways, but the suspension is the most common. Also, you might have a passing tone. You won't see appoggiatura and neighbor figures so much. And then number 3, remember that if the chord is incomplete, it will still have the root and the 7th. Number 4, when you double a tone, don't double the chord 7th or the leading tone. You already know about not doubling the leading tone. Now we're talking also about not doubling the 7th of the chord, okay? It's because it becomes a strong tendency tone, you would tend to hear it as parallel octaves going down. Looking at the 2 chord first, the 2 minor 7, you'll see in the example 15-1, here it is in G minor and G major. Okay, this one and this one are what we're talking about. All right, 2 generally goes to 5, just like the triad does. And you might delay the triad by the appearance of a 1-6-4. So let's play the first example, 15-2. This is interesting the way they wrote it. Look at the very beginning there. See, it says F and then F minor in parentheses. We'll do this in F major. So instead of going straight to 5, it was delayed by a 1-6-4. If you want to hear that in minor, let's play that. Okay, are you ready? Add your D flat in there. All right. The other thing that might happen is the 5 might be represented by a 7 diminished. And you'll find this in the 3rd example. Let's play that together. Here we are in F major. Now would you play it in F minor? It's the same. Okay, let's look at the Mozart example, 239, and you'll see that the most common way of singing a 2 minor 7 is in first inversion. Okay? I'm going to play the textual reduction first. Play that with me. 239 at the top of the page. So So now you see why it's used in first inversion, because you get the nice bass line coming up a step and then resolving to the 5/7, which takes you to the 6. And all together, play it with me. Really written to play on the piano. It's Symphony Number 41, a great piece meant for an orchestra. Okay, let's go on now to look at one unusual usage of the 2-chord, and that is as a plagal cadence. Instead of a 4/1, we have a 2/1. This is in the Dvorak New World Symphony. And you might know this. I'm going to try to play this from the textual reduction 15-5 because of the other clefs, alto clef, tenor clef, and bass clef. So here it is, the textual reduction. Well, it helps, doesn't it, that he already gave you a 4-chord to 1 and then sort of restates it as a 2-1. Because of that 7th in there, it's very convincing as a plagal cadence. Okay, let's move now to the 7 diminished chord in major. This is a special chord like the 5-chord. It has a leading tone and a 7th. Okay? Examples on 15-6, we have several things. We don't want to have parallel fifths, so we are probably not going to do this first choice here. Play B, which works out better. Having the C go up. Okay? And you can play through these, but you'll hear that general sound very close to a 5/7, but taking the bottom note of it off. Okay? Remember how we did that. So if you're in B flat here, you play an F7, and then I take the F off and I have A, C, E flat, and then I'm going to add the G, which happens to be a step away from the F that was in the 5-chord. Okay? So the main thing about the 7 diminished or 7/2 diminished 7 is to avoid the parallel fifths. And it talks about how to do this on page 241. Doubling the third of the 1 chord is the best way to do that. Lots of rules here. It's better to keep the principles in mind of avoiding your parallels that are objectionable. Okay? Let's look at that 7 diminished 7th chord in minor. It's fully diminished. Example 15-9 gives it to us in A minor. And put your hand on that for a minute. I want you to see how this chord has 2 tritones. It has a G sharp up to D, right? That's a diminished 5th. And it has the B up to F. Okay? Now, on the next page, 243, it talks about these 2 tritones. You remember how a tritone works. If it's spelled as a diminished 5th, it resolves inward. If it's spelled as an augmented 4th, it resolves outward. So would you now play, let's do the 2nd measure, part B there of example 15-10, okay? A sharp in the bass, G in the tenor, C sharp, alto, and the E in the soprano. And it goes to the 1 chord, okay? So let's investigate that. The 2 tritones are the A sharp, up to the E, right? The bass and the soprano. And if you notice, those two notes go in to the B and the D. The other tritone is the G and the C sharp. That's an augmented fourth, and notice that those go out to F sharp and D. So here again we have what we talked about before. This is a double third in the one chord. If you follow the tendency of the tritone, the tonic will have a double third, which is not usually what we do in root position, but it works very well here. Okay? You are now ready to work through the first checkpoint.